It has been almost a week since Innistrad Crimson Vow was released on Magic the Gathering Arena, and with the upcoming tabletop release on 19 November, it is time to take a look at 5 new cards from Crimson Vow that look set to make a splash in Standard. The first card that stands out immediately is Ascendant Pack Leader. Everyone's been dying to have a 1-mana drop wolf that actually does something, and Crimson Vow finally addresses that with Ascendant Pack Leader. For 1 green, Ascendant Pack Leader is a 2/1 wolf which enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it if you control a permanent with mana value 4 or greater. Whenever you cast a spell with mana value 4 or greater, put a +1/+1 counter on Ascendant Pack Leader. This 1-drop easily fits into any of your werewolf decks, but perhaps the best thing about it is that it replaces the next best 1-drop, Jaspera Sentinel, in competitive mono-green decks. The ceiling for Pack Leader is decent, considering it can get additional +1/+1 counters, and expect to see it as aggro mono-green decks stick around. The second card that stands out is Talia, Guardian of Thraben. Now, Talia is not a new card, and it has been reprinted several times across MTG's history, but her return to Standard comes at a good time for mono-white decks. For 1 generic and 1 white mana, Talia is a 2/1 human soldier which has First Strike. Non-creature spells cost 1 generic more to cast as long as she's on the battlefield. Talia has been a hate-bear staple in many other MTG formats for a really long time now, and having her on the board helps to slow down control decks that heavily rely on non-creature spells. She's also a decent attacker and blocker because of her strike. She's a great inclusion into most aggro mono-white decks, and mono-white decks are definitely a thing in Standard right now. The next card that might potentially ship Standard is the new blue enchantment, Necro Duality. For 3 generic and 1 blue, Necro Duality reads, whenever a non-token zombie enters the battlefield under your control, create a token that's a copy of that creature. This enchantment, in my opinion, it's pretty much nuts, and it pops off very well with Champion of the Parish, as well as other zombies with triggered abilities. Necro Duality, along with other cards printed in Crimson Vow such as Archghoul of Thraben, definitely make Dimir zombies a relevant force to be reckoned with in Standard right now. Enchantments are also not easy to remove in MTG, unless you're in green or white, so zombies are going to be very spicy. The fourth card that I will mention is Voice of the Blessed. For 2 white, Voice of the Blessed is a 2/2 Spirit Cleric that reads, whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on Voice of the Blessed. As long as Voice of the Blessed has 4 or more +1/+1 counters on it, it has Flying and Vigilance. As long as Voice of the Blessed has 10 or more +1/+1 counters on it, it has Indestructible. Life gain decks are already prevalent in the current meta, and Voice of the Blessed is going to make these decks even more of a pain in the butt. The ceiling for Voice of the Blessed is so much higher compared to other 2 white drops, with similar abilities like Hallowed Priest, and it is not difficult to add +1/+1 counters on Voice of the Blessed, as long as you have cards with life gain around. As long as your opponents don't adequately deal with your life gain sources, such as Prosperous Innkeeper or Lunar Veteran, it shouldn't be too difficult to give Voice of the Blessed Flying and Vigilance, or even Indestructible. The last card on my list is the blue card Heartbreaker Horror. I feel like I haven't seen much of Heartbreaker Horror because I haven't faced many control decks in Arena at the moment, but I think this card is a good addition to control decks. For 5 generic and 2 blue, Heartbreaker is a 7/8 Kraken Horror which has flash and it cannot be countered. Whenever you cast a spell, you can either return target spell you don't control to its owner's hand, or you can return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Essentially, Heartbreaker Horror makes all of your instant cards some of a counter spell, and the ability to return your opponent's spells back to their hands just make it so difficult for your opponents to play around this card. Otherwise, having a chunky 7/8 Kraken, which can also bounce any non-land target whenever you cast something at sorcery speed, is also a huge pain in the butt. The downside for Heartbreaker Horror is that it is very expensive to cast, but the ability to flash this in kind of mitigates that. And there you have it. These are the 5 cards which I think will shape the current meta of constructed Standard. If you think I have missed out any other cards, feel free to leave some comments and let's start some MTG conversation going. That's all from me right now, and I'll see you all next time.